Hi folks, my attempt to record our chat this evening on June 2nd, 2026 failed because I had the wrong audio input set for the recording. So I'm redoing it here, hopefully a little more smoothly in the event it helps anybody who might be interested. And the topic tonight was just an orientation of one of the references I recently uploaded to our reference section. In summary, I recently uploaded two that I think will be of interest to at least some of you. If not the way I've recorded it, at least the general content of what I attempted to capture. Very much of interest to me and probably to some of you as well. And those were in the areas of, I recorded some information in our general tips and references section under Guild Wars mode. That's the one I wanted to talk about mainly tonight, primarily because we have a week between our last Guild Wars weekly war, and the next one next week. So some of you might be interested in tweaking your defender teams on Guild Wars, and that's what this is primarily about. There is some related information that I stored under general game mechanics, and that has to do with the body shot mechanics and some of the nuances around that. And I also put together a little body shot calculator, a little bit of an experiment that can be used to first better understand how body shot is calculated, but also if there were any heroes, for instance, or teams that you wanted to tweak, or just want to anticipate how you would do against a particular level of enemy, for instance. You could use that little calculator, play around, get a better understanding, or actually use it to make some modifications to your team. However, it's too much to talk about in one night. And although these two topics are related, that's why I chose for tonight just to focus on the Defender's reference. My aim is not to read off this reference or talk about every detail that's in there, but just to give you enough of an orientation that if you did want to go into the document, maybe it would be a little less intimidating, or you might feel comfortable knowing where to go inside the file to find what you're looking for. But there is a lot of what I perceive as very useful information in there, unless you already have a high level of confidence and expertise in setting up your defender teams. For most of us, there's always room for improvement. So looking at what I posted here in the Discord file storage area, just a summary of what is in the document. There's actually three parts. The first part of the document, if you were only going to use one part, that's probably where you would want to start, because it has a basic summary of how to set up a good Guild Wars Defenders team. Part 2 actually gives more detailed, specific examples of how you would apply that knowledge that's recorded in Part 1 to create 3 highly desirable, possibly the top tier teams, but at least top tier teams to start with until you're more competent in tweaking your own. And I'll talk a little bit about what's in there. And then Part 3 of the document is the lengthiest part, and not necessarily the one that you would reference the most, but the reason it's really long is because I said, please give me, if you were going to use any of these 52 currently registered heroes, how would you best configure them as defenders in Guild Wars? So that's why that section is very long. If you're not going to dig in and try to start by basically do it yourself, invent your own, If you were going to do that, I guess part 3 hero reference would be a place to start. But for my money, I would start with part 1. And then once I feel confident that I've got that rudimentary information under my belt, I might move on to part 2 and see how closely I might be able to configure my teams that way to give it a good whirl in Guild Wars. And also, this type of defender information is something that easily translates to Outpost as well, which, as it turns out, Outpost is about our only place in the game modes where you can really effectively test out defender teams. So some food for thought there. A few caveats are important, and I've listed some of them here. First of all, I used AI to help do the research on the information in the document, because basically I wouldn't have enough bandwidth in a lifetime to go do it myself. So I worked with Claude, asked Claude to go out and do the homework. And as we should all know by now, the chatbots, Claude included, are not perfect. And they can make errors. Matter of fact, there were some errors that I've already corrected, which is why there's already a version 2 in here. And so just be aware that there could be some errors in there. But largely, it's going to be useful information, mostly on track, and there will be fewer mistakes than if I had tried to compile that bulk of material all by my lonesome. I am not sharing this for the purpose of recommending specific team constructs, although you can use it that way. Rather, I'm providing it both for myself and for anyone else who's interested as a tool to help us tweak our teams, as a starting point for experimentation with teams, general ideas, and ways to make modifications without kind of breaking things along the way. So don't take it as a, you should do exactly this kind of a tool. That is not the purpose of it. Also, with anything in our reference section or anything that you think of at any time, if you've got additional suggestions or requests or want to see some more information or different views of things, if you let me know, I'll take that into consideration. I don't promise to try to fulfill every wish like a magic genie, but if it's something that I can easily do or that I might naturally do for my own benefit at some point in time, I'll be glad to do that. One other thing that I want to mention before I get into the actual file is that this, obviously you can use it as an individual contributor to the team. However, the kind of information that's contained here can help us collectively and mutually as well, because the better each of us do at establishing solid, highly effective defender teams and coordinate that with each other to some degree, the more effective overall our team will be at fighting off a strong enemy teams. We want, every once in a while, we will struggle with someone's PvP human team in there because they've got them set up really well, and we're just not have our offensive team established well enough to be able to effectively deal with it. Well, for the enemy team, that's the role we play too, and we want to make it really, really hard for them. So the better job we can do, the more difficult we can make it for the enemy. Hopefully we'll get them to lose some tokens as well, or at least to have to struggle and not make it easy for them. So that said, let me move on to the actual file so that I can walk you through it. Okay, this is the opening of the file. It basically at the start reiterates the part 1, part 2, and part 3. And again, first thing we'll look at is the Guild War Defender gear and traits, the basic philosophy, rules of thumb, simple ways of going in and starting to check your teams to see if they stack up. Part 2 is the example configurations. There are basically 3 complete builds, an A, B, and C team build, and there's 3 variations on that. So a total of 9 teams across those 3 builds. And then part 3 is that lengthy hero reference that I mentioned, sorted by hero type. So you've got hunters, shooters grouped together. You've got, your assaults, and all your different melee classes in a row there with each one of the heroes, and ways to optimize that hero in terms of their use on a team, and also their weapons, traits, gear, and so on. So let's go down to the first section, the Guild Wars Defender gear and traits. Again, I am not going to read this whole thing, but there are some pieces of information that I do want to highlight because they're so important. The first thing is, if there was only one thing that I looked at in this whole file, it would be this section right here, the priority stack or the build order. And that's because this prioritizes the most important things relative to setting up your heroes in your teams. Number 1, the thing that makes the biggest difference is the number of pink stars your hero has. This, by the way, is the one area that is most directly linked to the body shot mechanic that I previously mentioned. It's the topic we're not going to try to talk about tonight, but at some future time we may want to do that. But the pink stars essentially are going to help you as a defender avoid body shots, which are low damage, and instead get more critical hits, which are high damage, and those are the things that are going to take the enemy out. So pink stars matter most. If you did nothing else, going in and trying to set your defender teams with the highest number of pink stars is one consideration. There's a little bit of a caveat around that, which pertains to if you've got a super weak team, you might not want your team to displace somebody else's high pink star team in the Sanctuary 19 and 20, for instance. So there are some instances where you might intentionally kind of deflate your team to minimize the likelihood of it using a premium spot. But generally speaking, when you're working to strengthen your teams, which is most of the time, pink stars matter. The second most important thing is bullet dodge. Scott could lecture us this, and it's true here with your Guild Wars Defenders, just like bullet dodge matters when you're in something like Outpost. And by the way, I think I already mentioned a good testing ground, maybe our only real effective testing ground for defensive teams, happens to be in the Outpost game mode. Number 3, the most crucial additional traits for your heroes besides bullet dodge on a defensive team are retaliate, critical aim, and lucky. At this point, another caveat: this document is talking about optimizing your teams as defenders. It probably has a lot of overlap with being a good offensive team player as well, but not guaranteed to be identical. If you're looking at tuning up an offensive team, it may not follow this exactly. So just bear in mind that there could be some differences depending on the circumstance and how you're using your heroes or teams. But generally speaking, for defenders in Guild Wars, this would be optimal. So retaliate, critical aim, and lucky. Number 4 is long range or weapons and incendiary weapons. So things like your firebugs, things that can reach long distance, because that's what the offensive team is going to be trying to do against us as well. So long range, incendiary to wear them down. And number 5 is our stun resistant armor. So when you're armoring them up, if you can work to make it difficult for the enemy to stun your team, all to the better. And here's some tips on how to do it. Okay, other things that are in this section that you can read more at your own pace if you're interested. So again, the single most important trait is bullet dodge, and it talks about why. Here's some team build philosophy and some of the top team leaders, which are talked about in much more detail down below. Here's some discussion on weapons and why you would want to select them. Also some mention of particular weapons like the Starbound rifle for range, but also a note on some of the adjustments that get made by the game when you are using it as a defensive weapon in Guild Wars. It actually shortens the range a little bit rather than making it kind of full field range, but it's still a very long range weapon. And then there's some other tips here as well. There's discussion on survivor traits. Again, some of the most important ones, and also ones that don't help you much, if at all, and become a liability as a defender. And then similarly for armor, emphasis again on the pink star factor being the most important thing of all. And then last but not least in this section are some top defender combinations at a glance. So if you didn't want to read anything else in this document and you just read this much, dollars to donuts, it can certainly help some, if not all of us, to make some tweaks and improvements to our defender teams. All right, part 2. Let's look at this a little bit. How to use the section. Essentially, again, I've provided 3 different team set configurations. As we know, every set of defenders has an A team, a B team, and a C team that you can set up. So configuration 1 has, a particular A, B, and C team led by Ezekiel, Guardian Carol, and either Carl or Rick. It has a little bit of discussion on that configuration. And similarly, there's a configuration 2 and a configuration 3 with different hero combinations in them. And now I'm going to not go through all the configurations, but I do want to take you to one configuration just so you can see how the material is organized in this document. So let's say we're going to look at configuration 1 and we want to see what Team A, Team B, and Team C look like. So I scroll down a little bit. Here's configuration 1, which focuses on interrupt and firepower. That's the kind of the key synergy in this configuration. So team 1, the A team, will be your primary team. It would be led by Ezekiel, have Guardian Carol, and Mercer. Now in here, I'll leave the reading to you, why it works, what the leader trait synergy is, what weapons are effective or not effective, the armor and the traits, key survivor traits, and also some tactical notes. It'll do the same thing for your B team, which in this case would be led by Dwight, along with Princess and Hunter Maggie. And then there is a C team, just like in the real Guild Wars. Your C team is your low tier team, but that does not mean it's unimportant. It just focuses on some different things. This is your second chance cover team. So here we've got it led by Carl or Rick, with Merle and either Eugene or fighter Rosita. And again, the explanation on how you go about prioritizing your weapons assignments, your armor traits, key survivor traits, and more tactical notes, and also why. And there's a similar thing for configuration 2, team set, and scrolling down, configuration 3, team set. So these should be solid starting places for teams. Even if you said to yourself, I don't want to think about it, I just want to set it up. You could, in theory, come to one of these configurations and give it a try. Now, there are some notes at the end of this section on, pink star distribution, hero overlap. For instance, if you wanted to borrow a team from configuration 3 and use, Carl, Sniper Morgan, and Shane and plug it into in place of another team in configuration number 1, you would personally be responsible for making sure that none of these heroes are being used, more than one time. The document doesn't sort that out for you. You have to do it yourself. So within a configuration, hopefully we've got the issue fixed where you're not reusing a hero because the game won't let you. But if you're mixing and matching, you'll have to be careful and figure that out on your own. All right, let's go to part 3. So part 3 is the hero reference with all 52 current heroes in here. We're also not going to look at all 52 heroes, but I'll show you one or two and also some general comments about all of them. You'll notice that each of the heroes is ranked with either 3, 2, or 1 star. These have to do with the prioritizing them as leaders on your defensive team. So if you see a hero with 3 stars, it's going to make a much better leader than, say, a 1-star hero. That doesn't mean that a 2 or a 1-star hero aren't useful on your teams, but not necessarily your best leaders. There's a caveat, again, just a reminder that might change for you depending on the star ranking for your heroes. So if you see, say, a 3-star hero here, like Guardian Carol, designated to be a really good, exceptional leader as a Guild Wars defender, but your Guardian Carol is not developed yet, you might be better off using one of your other, 2 or hopefully not a 1-star, but if you have to, digging into those lower defender ranked heroes in order to get the pink star count up. So that's, again, trade-offs that you'll need to consider and judgments that you'll have to make on your own. So this is assuming the 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 stars is kind of assuming all things are equal, which they never really are. But if you had your druthers, you'd pick the 3 stars as your team leaders. And that also talks a little bit about why. So now we've got sections for each different survivor class. So we start with hunters, probably move to shooters, assaults, and then get into the different melee classes. So for any one hero, here we're starting with Guardian Carol. You see, she has 3 stars, meaning she's going to make an excellent leader on your defensive team. It talks about her leader trait and why it's important. Then it talks about the defense value, and again makes some comments here. And it also recommends the best traits for her specifically as a defender. Again, like I said before, just because we're talking defender doesn't mean these are not good traits as an offensive player as well. But we're not looking at that right now. There could be times if you were using Guardian Carol and trying to optimize her for offense, maybe some of these might look a little bit different, or maybe not, but you'd have to look at that separately, and I've not covered that in this document. This is just a defensive view. Weapons. Here are some recommendations around weapons, armor recommendations, and also best teammates for her on a defensive team. So this is some great information. Some of it may be repeated already up in the upper section of this document, but there could be some additional considerations that are plopped in here as well for you to see and play around with, and then some general notes. So same thing. Next one in this list is Sasha, and you can see that as a leader, she's not the top recommended one. Not bad, but she's, kind of mid-level as a leader as a defender here in Guild Wars. So again, same basic areas: leader trait, her defensive value, and why, the traits recommended for her, the weapons recommended for her, armor, best teammates, and notes. And it goes on down for all of the rest of the heroes. That is basically it. I hope this has been a little bit helpful. You know how to catch me in the funny papers, either to make suggestions, requests, or complaints, or to talk about anything else. I welcome your feedback all the time. Take care. Have fun. Bye.